Our society has brainwashed us so bad that we tend to feel a sense of guilt if something like paying off debt becomes too easy. And I remember there was a comment a while ago where someone posted, "Do the banks know what you're doing?" If this, whereas if we're doing something illegal, but we're not doing anything illegal. All we're you doing is using the bank's existing tools to pay off debt. That's all we're doing. Okay. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to pay off debt using something called the velocity method. So, what is this special method? Well, I'll quickly go over the first step of the method, which is creating a budget, because your budget is your debt attack plan, right? So, you have your income, expenses, leftover checking savings, and then in your expense breakdown, you list every single debt that you have, because remember, this is a debt payoff strategy. And on the very last line item, what we do is we just give an average of all of our personal expenses not tied to debt. So things we always have to pay for, even if we're debt free, like food, gas, insurance, and we just put them in a combined total. So, what is the question that we're trying to answer when we're talking about the strategy, right? So, the first question is, hey, if I were debt free, would my life get better? So, for example, if all these debt payments went away, is there noticeable improvement in my life? And if the answer to that is no, so let's say you make $1,000 of income and you have a negative $1,000 afterwards, then you don't have a debt problem, you have an income problem, right? So that's very important to remember because a lot of people can't tell the difference between debt expenditures or payments that go to debt and payments that don't go to debt, right? So there's a difference between what you would call NOI, net operating income, and cash flow if you ever study real estate investing. But we're applying the same principles um, at the individual level. Okay. So now that we've created a budget, okay, we're just going to assume with this velocity method that we have the same income and also the same expenses. And we can show how we can increase this $552 and multiply it without making more money. Okay. Now, what's the first step to paying off debt? Well, it's really easy. It's just don't save money, right? Because if you don't save money, you're paying off debt. And a lot of people have a hard time paying off debt because we're all brainwashed by our society to hold contradictory ideas about it. Like if we save money, we don't pay off debt. But then if we pay off debt, we don't save money. So we all feel bad and we end up doing nothing, right? A confused mind does nothing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change the flow of money in our banking. And so in the average American banking style, right, we have our income, we pay our expenses, and then we put the leftover in a checking and savings, right? It's taught to us as the quote responsible thing to do. Whereas in this method, we treat our checking account not as the final destination of our money, but just as a temporary stop, right? Whereas in the average American banking style, the checking account is the final destination of your money. So if the final destination, this is not the final destination of our money. I'm sorry, if the checking account is the final destination of our money for the velocity method, then what is it? It's called a line of credit. So what's a line of credit? What's basically a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again, right? That's pretty much what it is. Okay. So if you've never heard of it, then look up personal or home equity line of credit. So it's a really flexible tool. And it's the only tool that the bank has where you could put all of your money into it. And whatever you put in, you could get immediately out um, like a moment after, right? Like a millisecond after. Like this doesn't happen with life insurance. This doesn't happen with credit cards or loans. A loan is a one-way street. A credit card is technically a line of credit, but it's a little bit harder to use because if I dump all of my 5,600 into one credit card, then I can't magically get that money back and pay all the other credit cards. Okay. But with the line of credit, we certainly can do that. Now, if we have a good portion of debt payments, right? And we only have a little bit left over. If we go to a bank, will the bank give us a free and clear line of credit? The answer to that is no, because banks don't lend money to people who need it. And if you want to know why, it's because people who need money, according to the bank, are bad people because they know from the gajillions of transactions that they've done and all the statistics, just like an insurance company, that people who need money don't pay you back. That's why the bank considers people who need money to be bad people. I'm not saying that you're a bad person, but the bank does. Okay. So it's very important to do things in the correct order of operations, including when to get credit. Now, I'll tell you what, you might be asking, well, why do we teach this in a somewhat unrealistic way? Is because it's much easier to understand the importance of a line of credit than even a realistic scenario. In fact, this is the most complicated realistic scenario I've ever done, which is 22 debts and $4.10 left over, starting out with a maxed out line of credit. And I remember it took me 1 hour and 30 minutes to get through this, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." Like, what did I just do? What have I done? But, yeah. So, anyways, so we're just gonna make the assumption that we have a free and clear line of credit, and trust me, I've been doing this for about 3 years teaching online, and it's much easier to understand the concept with this one unrealistic assumption. Kinda like how they teach physics, right? Like, I remember when I took physics in high school, they told us, like, we make some unrealistic assumptions, and I think the most unrealistic assumption in physics was that only one variable can change and everything else is constant, which is not true. Which is I think the concept of Einstein physics, right? Or I don't know what you would call it. Post Newtonian physics. I think that's what you call it. All right. So now let's go ahead and do this. So what we're going to do is rank our debts using something called the cash flow index. And if you don't know what that is, just the basic formula of the debt amount. So the balance of your debt, right? So 5,000 divided by 175. And you do this for all of your debts. Why do we do this for all of our debts? Because this is a debt ranking system, right? You rank your debts from smallest to largest. And so if you take a look at this, this is the 30-year mortgage. Now, why do you want to pay off the 30-year mortgage last? Because you have to give a lot of money for little bitty payment, right? 265,000 for $1,200 a payment. Whereas if I pay these credit cards, I'm going to get a lot more bang for my buck. So that's what these low cash flow index numbers mean, right? So it's a proportion of the balance of your debt compared to the payment. All right. So what we're going to do is we take these low cash flow index numbers with the credit cards, start with the credit cards first, and then we're going to move it into the line of credit. And so that's $28,000. Okay. $28,000. And then we're going to move it into the line of credit. And then guess what happens here? Oh my goodness. These payments literally just go to zero. And so just kind of with one magic trick, I guess, if you want to call it a magic trick, we turned this $552 into $1,400 of cash flow, even though this income stays the same, right? The income stays the same, but this checking and savings, whatever this number was, is now multiplied by almost a factor of 3, right? And then the final step is that now you put your entire paycheck, this $5,600, into that line of credit, take your expenses out, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. So after every single month, the balance of your debt should go down by $1,475, and we still pay for our monthly payments, all of our expenses using a line of credit. Now, I will say this $2,000, we don't necessarily have to pay for it directly with the line of credit. What we can do is that with these personal expenses, just pay for it with credit cards. And as long as the statement balance is paid off, then you're not paying any interest. In fact, I consider this method to be a 1-month interest-free loan, right? 1-month interest-free loan, if you know how to do it right, okay? So let's just go ahead and then do this. So what we're going to do is take the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus our cash flow, so 1475.1. And then what we're going to do is take the average daily balance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then multiply it by the interest rate, 0.08, and then divide by 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then you see that after every single month, the balance of the line of credit goes down. You see how easy that is? That's incredibly easy. It's so, you remember what those Twitter posts where it's like, it's so effing simple. And then that's like the thumbnail for YouTube. I got to do that. I got to do those fake Twitter post thumbnails with the check mark. I got to get a check mark. All right. So 21 months. So let's go ahead and do that. And then this is going to be 28 plus 5. And then this can be 33K. And then this is going to be these 3 credit cards. And then we just have 3 more loans. So we have the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage. So what we're going to do is get a snapshot of the current balance of the loans at month 21. And so I just want to show you this, right? So you'll notice, okay, that this interest rate is 7%. And let me tell you how the average American thinks. Oh my goodness, this is the highest interest rate. So therefore, I should pay the student loan first, right? That's how the average person thinks. And we're going to ignore the interest rate, at least for now in this instance, and then follow the cash flow index. So rule of thumb, anything below 50 is the one you want to pay off first. And you want to do this in order. So what we're going to do is pay this 14 grand for about $400 of cash flow, rather than this 34 grand for $464 of cash flow. So you get a lot more bang for your buck. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to move this right here. And let me go ahead. And then this is just going to be plus 14671.94. Okay. And then this is going to be $395.31. And then now we have $1,800 of cash flow. Okay, so did I do this right? Okay. All right. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I did this right. No, I did not do it right. My bad. So this is going to be, actually, let me see this. 21 months. And then this is paid. Let me see if I did this right. Oh, month 29, my bad. I forgot to put the milestone for the auto loan. So this would be 33 plus 22. And then this is going to be 55K. Okay, so now at 29 months, what's the current balance of the loan? So I'm just going to do 29. Okay, 29. Actually, this is going to be 0 now. And then, so now the current balance is 32 grand. Okay, so I'm just going to do this right here. And then this cash flow should be, oh my goodness, did I screw up again? I think I did, my bad. Hold on, let me see. 1475. And then I did not update the cash flow here. Don't you love it when you screw up and then it turns out things turn out better than you thought they were? All right, so now let's try one more time. Okay, so 29 months, it gets paid off. Good. Okay. So now at 29 months, this is the current balance of that. All right, so now once we add that in, then we get an extra $464 back in our cash flow. So now our cash flow is over $2,000. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And then this is going to be plus 32720.9 and then minus 2334.85. Okay, so now this is going to be 44 months. Okay, so, and then now, so it'll be 55, or so 44 months. Now, that was easy. Man, I think I skipped something. Yeah, I probably, you see, here's the thing. The more good I get at this, or actually, let me grammatically be correct, grammatically, the better that I get at this, the worse that I actually am teaching it. I remember when I was a kid, or like in high school, the more credentials that a teacher held, like, so for example, my high school, chemistry teacher had a PhD in physics or something like that. They just seem to be the worst teachers. And I remember that in college too. Like, the more status a professor had, like if they were a senior professor, they just seem to be the worst teachers I've ever had. And that's why I never really thought that, or I always had this fear in my head that the more status I got, like, and the more experience I had in teaching, the worse teacher I would become. Okay. Anyways, all right. So now this is the current balance of the mortgage. And so what we did here is that we moved the first loan, We paid it off. We get an extra $395 of cash flow. And then with the second loan, we essentially did the same thing. Now, I'm going to tell you that as we increase the term and have a higher cash flow index, we have to be a little bit careful, because the thing that I will tell you that you can screw up on is if you move a low interest rate loan to a high interest rate line of credit and there's no real cash flow in that loan, you can really screw up, which is what a 30-year mortgage is telling you, that you have a lot of balance and very little payment or very little cash flow when you dump all of that uh, money, or when you do a balance transfer from a mortgage into a line of credit, right? And I see this on the internet all the time. I do. In fact, let me just do a quick Google search on this, which is a first lien HELOC, right? Everybody's telling you to get the first lien HELOC. First lien. Oh, this one says caution. Okay. Do not get a first lien HELOC, but yeah, okay. So how to pay off debt fast using a first lien HELOC, right? So people are doing it. We're talking about it. At least some people are telling you not to do it, like this guy right here. The guy who told you, who can't use specific words by the Illinois state government. Yeah. All right. So let me just kind of go here. And then we have a calculator. So this is what we're going to do, right? We have two options when it comes to paying off the 30-year mortgage. Number one is that we just simply make extra payments, right? So we make the monthly payment, we make extra payments. Number two, we can use a line of credit. Now, when I talk about number one, that's default option that nobody does, right? I mean, think of how many people who who know that they can overpay not just a mortgage, even a loan or a credit card. You know, whoa, that's the way that you pay off debt. That's that's the way to quote paying the debts off early. So why don't people do it? Is because whenever you overpay a loan, credit card, most banking tools except for lines of credit, your money has, there's a little friction point when it comes to your money, and that's why most people never do it. That's why most people are afraid to take money out of their checking account. And so what we're going to do is, kind of as an alternative, is just move some of that loan into a line of credit and then just dump and repeat the same process. Dump it over and over again, right? So let's just say that we take $6,000 of this mortgage and move it into a line of credit and then just repeat the same process. Well, let's see what happens here. So if we just kind of do this, and then we're going to do plus 6000, we see that in 2 months, the debt gets paid off. So 2 to 3 months, right? So every 2 to 3 months, that $6,000 get paid off while we're making the monthly payment. We just rinse and repeat over and over again. And then we see here with this calculator, and let me actually see, is this the right balance? 246,000, right? 246,000. This gets paid off in 6.6 years. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. Holy balls, like you're using an 8% line of credit to pay off this 4% loan. And I'm going to tell you something, that putting an entire loan, replacing the entire loan with the line of credit versus doing it in incremental pieces that we're doing right here, or sweeps, are two completely different concepts, right? And a lot of people don't realize this. They just see the interest rate and they just freak out, okay? Because even if we used a 1% interest rate line of credit, so now it's 35, right? So let's put 1%, and we see that it's 33 grand of interest. So it barely makes a dent. So you know how the people freak out, like when, let's say the interest rate lowers in the housing market, right? And everybody's all up in arms, and they want to buy property because the interest rate has gone down like 1 point or something like that, right? Everybody's excited. But really what you have to care about is how much you pay, not the interest rate, okay? And a lot of people don't really think about that, right? They don't really think about that. Now, I'll tell you when the interest rate does matter. So if I put the entire loan into a line of credit, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. You see this is 7 grand of interest. Whereas if we do 8% with the same concept, you'll see it turns to 87 grand. So 7 grand versus 87 grand, right? That's a big deal. I think that's a big deal, right? 7 grand versus 87 grand. So interest rate does matter when you're replacing the entire loan with the line of credit, right? Like you see how that affects what you pay. But okay, when you're doing like small chunks, small sweeps, it doesn't matter. You see that? Like it literally and a lot of people don't understand this. Or if they do, they're just kind of pretending to not care or pretending to not know. All right. So now let's go ahead and go here. And so 0 and then what is this? This is 95K. And so now this is paid off in 6.6 years. So 44 divided by 12 plus 6.6. And now 10.27 years, and then we're debt free. Woohoo, debt free. All right. So yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. You see how easy that was? And don't worry, I'm guilt free, right? Because I did nothing wrong. Because what did I end up doing? I just not saved money, right? That was literally what I did. I just didn't save money. That's what this velocity method is. It's not saving money rebranded 2.0, right? Not saving money is not an illegal thing, right? You know what's illegal? Bank fraud. Okay, that's illegal. But we're not committing bank fraud. We're just dumping all of our money into a line of credit and not saving money. So let me put a 2.0 here. It's kind of like Tosh 2.0. All right, well, that's it for today, folks. This is 𝐟𝐸 Mentorship here with another video. I can't even speak today. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.